So I'd just like to welcome you. As you know, this is our 6th MS Day, and we started a project off with the 4th one. There was an administrative opportunity happening in London about 4 years ago when an organization called University College London Partners came about, and it allowed us to partner with our various institutions in London, which allowed us to now alternate the research days. So you'll see that different teams of people are going to be running the research days on different years. So how many of you went last year? Okay. So this is why there's different faces. And this is today's one. So the little icon there is basically handing over the baton. And I think it also helps refresh things because you get different faces. You don't get the same people up here every time speaking. So the UCLP, just to let you know, it's based on an organization in Boston called Boston Partners. And what the Boston Partners realized is instead of duplicating services and initiatives, it's best to collaborate and partner with each other to try and optimize healthcare across the region. And the Boston Partners, which is a conglomerate of academic hospitals in the Boston area in the United States, has been very successful. And I can say UCLP is very successful as well, isn't it? Very successful. Actually, the MS group is held up as an example of how effective UCLP is. And just to say to you, this is their mission statement, which I can't remember, so I'll have to read it. Okay? But it's really to optimize research and to try and bring that research into clinical practice. And the partnership creates the mechanisms for the rapid translation of research. And that's one of the reasons why we invite you up every year to listen to us talk, so we can explain to you what we're trying to do with our research and how we're trying to improve the management of people with multiple sclerosis. So these days don't happen without a lot of administration. And Alison, where's Alison? Alison's out there. We'd just like to thank Alison because Alison really chaired the committee getting this done. So Alison, thank you very, very much for all the hard work you've done. And then behind Alison is our Centre Administrator at BARTS, it's Jyoti. And then David Baker and Gareth have been instrumental in getting the topics sorted out about how the day is going to run. So thank you very much, everybody. And then I'd like to thank all our partners. As you can see, there are 4 neuroscience centers linked to UCLP. It's the Queen Square UCL, it's BartsMS, we have the Royal Free Hospital, and we have Queen's in Romford. So I'd just quickly like to go through an introduction, and the way I thought I should do it is talk about the past, the present, and the future. But just to say that we have been very, very successful. I wanted to highlight 2 trials. The UCLP, this was a partnership. This is a grant we had from the National MS Society and the UK MS Society in 2005 we got it. It was called the Promise 2010. And David, the mouse doctor, developed this wonderful animal model that develops optic neuritis, the same manifestation. And we realized that we could protect the nerves in the eye if we gave the drug in a very short period of time. So what we needed then to do was take the research into people with the disease. So we put another grant in, but there's no way we could have done this study at BARTS because we don't have an optic neuritis clinic. So we went to our colleagues at UCLH, and they have a clinic at Moorfields Eye Hospital, and Dr. Raj Kapoor was a principal investigator, and then we put a grant application in, and that was funded. And the trial recruited relatively quickly, considering the difficulties in getting people into a study in 2 weeks of onset. And the trials now are finished, and the results have been analyzed. And I wish I could present them to you today, but they're not ready for presentation. But the presentation of these results will happen at the American Academy meeting in April in Washington. So we've been given a platform presentation in Washington to present these results. And if you follow the blog, we'll get you the results over there. The second one is an observation we made. So Professor Julian Gold's not with us today. He's in Australia looking after patients there. But he came up with an observation that one of their patients who had MS, who became HIV positive and went on to drugs for HIV did extremely well. So we then went and interrogated some databases, and we found out that having HIV seems to lower your risk of MS. Now, we don't think it's the virus, it may be the treatment. So based on that, we went to various companies that make HIV drugs, and we were fortunate to get the company Merck to sponsor the study. And is Monica here? So Monica's really been the PI, the principal investigator on this study. And if it wasn't for Monica, this study would not have happened. But the study fully recruited, it's complete, and we're in the process now of getting all the data analyzed in the database lock. So we will have the results, hopefully, in the next few months for that study. So that's another success story about the past. Coming to the present, so there are two studies running at the moment, and they both come out of collaborations between UCL partners. The top one is another study that came out of our program of 2010, the Promise 2010 program, and this is looking to see if we can slow down or delay the onset of secondary progressive MS by adding on top of existing therapies a drug that protects nerves from dying. So this is to try and slow down progressive MS. And the outcome we're using for this is lumbar punctures. And when nerve cells degenerate, they release their contents, and a particular protein that gets released is called neurofilament. And the levels of neurofilament that get released is an indication of how much damage is occurring. And the idea is to put people on a placebo or an active therapy. And that particular drug came out of David Baker's animal model. And we've got very good data that this is neuroprotective as an add-on therapy in the animal model. And we're currently recruiting, and Monica, again, is the star of the show. She's the principal investigator on this trial. And we're in the process of recruiting for this trial. And the next study is the SMART study, and this is a study that we've been working on now for quite a few years in terms of getting the principle. And this is actually a kind of an adaptive design study where we're testing 3 different compounds in secondary progressive disease against placebo to see again if we can slow down or delay the progression of the disease. And I suspect some people in this audience may be participating in that trial. And that's been run by our principal investigator is Jeremy Chataway, and he's one of the consultant academic neurologists at UCLH at Queen Square. So that's what's happening right now. And if you want to ask questions about it, the principal we're all aware of these trials, we can discuss them with you. So this is actually a list. Now I've given you an example of what we call investigator-led studies. This is actually a list of the current trials occurring across our area in MS, from commercial sponsors as well. So these are company-sponsored, pharmaceutical-sponsored trial, and they're all geared at trying to modify the course of the disease. So there's quite a large number of them, and there will be some tables out there where we have the trial coordinators and the nursing staff sitting there for you to ask any questions about these. So we haven't got time to go through them all, but you may be able to ask questions about them today. So the message is we're very active right now in clinical research, trying to improve the lot of people with MS. What about the future? So the future is very interesting in the sense that the first one is research that you probably, if you've been to this research day in the past, you would have heard about Professor Baker's research to try and improve the treatment of spasticity in multiple sclerosis. And David and his colleagues, David Selwood, invented a new class of compound. They showed that this new class of compound worked in animal models. They've raised money. They've tested it in normal volunteers to show that it's safe. And we've now got the funding in place to do the proof of concept phase 2, what we call a phase 2 trial. And that's Cambex. And is Rachel will be here this afternoon. So Rachel is the principal investigator, Rachel Farrell. And she's an spasticity expert, and she'll be able to explain to you about this particular trial. So this is now about to start the future. The next one is, as you know, Julian Gold spoke about the Charcot project 2 years ago. Some of you would have heard that. This is trying to investigate the role of viruses. And we are in the process of putting together another trial called the Artemis trial to get proof of concept that a combination of antiviral drugs can work in people with the disease. And that'll hopefully be, we can get the funding in place starting in the next year or two. The Progressive MS Alliance is really the community. This is not only researchers and clinicians working in the field, but people with the disease, their families, and the other stakeholders, particularly the societies, realize that the biggest unmet need is progressive MS. We have lots of very effective therapies now, lots of strategies to manage relapsing MS, but there's just a big gap in the progressive thing. So they've formulated this thing called the International Progressive MS Alliance, which is bringing together a whole lot of stakeholders to try and tackle progressive MS in a new and fresh way. And this particular publication set what they considered to be the guidelines, the main aims of this project. There's been a round of small grants given out to try and prime this initiative. There's been a call for a second round of grants. And we at UCLP have put in quite a few applications to try and get some funding to improve the people with progressive MS. So please follow the blog. We'll keep you up to date with what happens with the Progressive MS Alliance. But it's kind of us saying to you, we haven't forgotten you because you've got progressive MS. It's just that what we've tried up until now hasn't worked, and we need to rethink things. We need to rethink things. And this is just a slide just to show you that a lot is happening in progressive MS. So although the terrible news, and I think it was terrible news, that the fingolimod trial in progressive MS, so-called INFORM study, was negative, was very disappointing because we were hoping that was going to be a positive trial. But currently there are a large number of other trials running. There's ocrelizumab, laquinimod in primary progressive disease. There's a study in the United States of abutalost. There's a study of natalizumab, siponimod, DMF in secondary progressive disease. I've already mentioned to you the SMART study. Okay, so there's lots of activity going on in the field. And we've also got some trials happening early on in the course of the disease. And these trials actually are there, being done to see if they impact on those processes that we think are driving progressive disease. So there is a lot of activity happening. It just takes a long time for these studies to happen and give results. And so this is kind of where we're at the moment. I'm not going to spend time. You'll be able to ask questions at the tables about where we are with therapies at the moment. And I put little signals over there because for those of you who live in the UK, because I know there's some people that have come from other countries to this day, unfortunately, both these drugs for symptomatic therapy, Sativex and Fampridine, have not been given a green light by NICE, so we can't prescribe them, except under very limited circumstances in the NHS. And I know people with disabilities are very frustrated by this. But hopefully, over the next few years, we'll get NICE to get green light these drugs, because there is a process for NICE doing that. The good news is we've got a lot of green lights occurring on this side, and these are all the emerging disease-modifying therapies. And you're going to hear a lot about that from Dr. Turner a little bit later on. So why have we got this particular format? Why are you sitting at tables? So you think this was our idea? So we've tried to listen to you all. We have a task force at our hospital that Alison runs, and by speaking to the feedback group, people thought the research day format didn't allow for enough question time. So we've actually arranged it around tables, and you're going to see there's going to be different researchers moving around these tables so you can ask them questions and discuss their research. So the format is going to be talks, half an hour per talk. There's going to be a talk given for about 10 to 15 minutes with open questions. Then it's going to shut down, and you're going to be able to discuss that research or anything else you want at your table. And I'd just like to thank our sponsors. These are the pharmaceutical companies that have generously given us educational grant to hold this day. Thank you very much.